The death toll in Egypt passes 500 amid calls for more protests and fears of civil war. Getting personal, Kevin Rudd accused of hypocrisy over negative election campaign.
What's going on here? Was Mr Rudd telling us a fib then?
Those ads are based on policy.
Cancer research breakthroughs here and overseas. And great Spanish land, how close we got to being a Spanish colony.
From SBS, this is World News Australia.
Good evening and welcome to the program. I'm Michael Tomalaris. The death toll in Egypt has risen to more than 500 after a bloody crackdown by security forces on supporters of ousted Islamist President Mohamed Morsi. Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood has called for more protests in Cairo tonight amid fears the country will slip into civil war. Australia has joined growing international condemnation of the violence.
Streets once filled with protesters, now a smouldering wasteland, the aftermath of Egypt's worst violence in years, and there are fears of more bloodshed.
أنا أتمنى من الله عز وجل إنه يحسن الدماء، يعني ما تبقاش زيادة عن نفس الحالة اللي احنا شفناها دي، احنا عايزين مصر تعيش في أمان.
The crackdown at Cairo's Rabaa Adawiya Mosque saw security squads using lethal force to crush mostly unarmed protesters.
واحد واقف جنبي في ثانية انضرب بالترام على صدري مات. مفيش مشي تاني. مات في ثانية. طلع جيله في صدره. عملنا ايه؟
Supporters of Mohamed Morsi's Muslim Brotherhood claim more than 2,000 people have been killed. Makeshift hospitals overwhelmed by the sheer volume of casualties.
We could have saved some of the injured if ambulances had been allowed access to the camp to take them to hospital. This is a crime of war, and I speak as a doctor.
3 journalists, including a British cameraman, were killed in the chaos. The interim government justified its actions by releasing infrared images supposedly showing Morsi supporters firing on police. Elsewhere, fighting broke out between the Muslim Brotherhood and Coptic Christians. 3 churches burned to the ground. As protesters plan to gather once again, international condemnation of the violence has been growing. That includes Australia, following claims a 24-year-old national was detained and beaten while trying to film one of the protests.
Australia is deeply concerned by the escalating violence in Cairo and across Egypt, and we would call upon the government of Egypt to exercise restraint.
Turkey has called it a blow to hopes of democracy returning to Egypt, its president likening the situation to Syria.
Yoksa hemen komşumuzda olup bitenler nasıl başlamıştır? Herkesin hatırlamasını isterim. Sivil halka silahla müdahale işte olayları bu noktaya getirmiştir.
Britain, France and Germany have all summoned their Egyptian envoys as several other countries urge their citizens to leave immediately. But the US has stopped short of accusing the current rulers of staging a military coup. Manny Tsigas, World News Australia.
It is proposing to offer a lower company tax rate in the territory to attract business as part of a plan to develop Northern Australia. He can't say how much it'll cost, and Tony Abbott has revealed voters may still have to wait some time to see the coalition's policy costings.
Irrigating the inland. Kevin Rudd wants to expand the Ord River scheme in Western Australia's north.
Turned it on for you today.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much.
He flew to Kununurra from Darwin after proposing a Northern Australia investment plan, including a discount company tax rate for the Northern Territory of 20%.
I'm talking about how you grow the economy of the territory.
First specifying Darwin-based businesses, he's had to clarify.
They should be NT-based. I'm talking about an NT special economic zone.
Mr Rudd would like to expand it to Western Australia and Queensland, but there are constitutional obstacles. As for the cost...
We're working all that through.
It's just another thought bubble.
The government rubbished a similar coalition proposal early this year.
Mr Rudd is playing catch-up, but he's not fair income and he never gets it right.
Finally, on the election, bad news for Labor in an analysis of betting market odds done for the Australian Financial Review. It seems punters believe the government will lose on September 7 by 22 seats.
The eerie sight of cancer close up. This picture shows cancer cells in the kidney. This one in the ovary. Investigating how cancer actually starts is crucial to preventing it or beating it. And the most important clue may be genetic. The steady rhythm of machines analysing DNA at the Sanger Institute near Cambridge, part of a massive international effort to understand how what happens to our DNA affects our chances of suffering from cancer. Each of our cells has a strand of DNA, the body's genetic code. It's made up of pairs of what are called bases, put together in a very specific order. But sometimes these can be damaged or altered, and these changes can lead to cancer. We know smoking can do that, and inside lung cancer, the genetic pattern is altered in a particular way. A pair of bases is swapped over. It's a signature of the mutation caused by tobacco. A different signature, or pattern of genetic change, is left behind by the ultraviolet light that can lead to skin cancer. And the scientists have now found many other signatures of this kind, which can all cause different types of cancers for reasons that aren't known but can now be investigated.
This is the largest study of its kind, and what we're very excited about is that through our findings we have now opened a door and encountered many different paths that can lead to cancer formation.
An animation of the moment a cancer cell divides. This latest research will not directly lead to new treatments. But Professor Andrew Biankin, a surgeon specialising in cancer, was involved in the study and says it creates new options for the future, especially with early warning.
The implications it has to patients is that now we can think about not just treatment, but we can also think about early detection and prevention. So if we can start to understand what's actually causing those cancers specifically, which chemical processes are doing that, we can start to think about how we intervene.
This study has achieved something unimaginable only a few years ago, analysing 5 million genetic changes in cancer cells. The fight against cancer is slow and frustrating, but understanding how cancer starts should, in the long run, make a real difference.
It's taken 30 years, but an Australian scientist says he's found a way to destroy the structure of cancer cells. Professor Peter Gunning from the University of New South Wales believes the treatment may work against the childhood cancer, neuroblastoma and also melanoma.
Zoe Eamon was diagnosed with neuroblastoma when she was 14 months. She had 6 rounds of chemotherapy and radiation treatments and is now in remission.
Words just can't describe how we felt just watching her fade away.
Her family hopes a new treatment being developed in Sydney could help Zoe and other children. Professor Peter Gunning started his research on April Fool's Day 1980, just as his colleagues were giving up. Nearly 3 decades on, he says his findings published today in the journal Cancer Research are no joke.
Nobody has ever had a drug like this that attacks this particular part of the architecture of a cell.
The idea is to target weak spots in tumour cells with drugs called antitropomycins, causing them to collapse. The trick was finding how to do it without harming the heart.
There really was a point, I think, when we put it in animal models and we saw that it actually worked and that we could kill the cancer in an animal model that was really exciting.
Professor Gunning says up to 30% of children with neuroblastoma die from it, so there's a pressing need for new therapies.
Animal testing on the drugs is currently underway in the US. Researchers hope to start human trials of Australian children with neuroblastoma by 2015, as long as they can get the funding.
The research here is currently funded by the Kids Cancer Project to the tune of $1 million a year. Cassandra Hill, World News Australia.